One of the lessons that I learned from my business failure is that all individuals can transform the world by simply going out of their own home country into the developing world to start a business. Some years back, I had an opportunity to go to Ukraine. Ukraine at that time had become an independent country, and when I arrived, I saw utter economic chaos. People were in misery, their spending power had been hurt, there were no food and basic necessities in the shelves, and the currency and the money was depreciating every day. I stayed back in Kiev, not quite sure what I was going to do next. One day, I was walking on the streets and I noticed a long line. Of course, in those days, lines were not uncommon. There were lines for everything. People got into the line even before asking what the line was for, because they knew that something valuable was being sold. Out of curiosity, I got into the line myself. And when I came to the top of the line, I realized it was for meat. So if you can imagine this particular scene that I saw, a butcher standing behind a counter with half a side of beef hanging off a hook, and with a very large knife, he was cutting up the pieces of meat, wrapping it in an old newspaper, and handing it to the person on the line. The person on the line, the customer, could not ask for a specific cut. They got what they got. As I watched that scene, ideas began to come into my mind. Bulbs flashed. And I thought to myself, why don't I get into the meat business and prepare good quality meat that is packaged, portion controlled into steaks, hamburger patties, weighed with a brand, and then try to sell it through a supermarket or supermarket chains that were springing up at that time. As I thought about it, I liked the idea, and that's what I decided to do. So through friends and relationships that I had been building while I was living over there, they kind of steered me to go to Western Ukraine, where there was a meat plant that was looking to modernize itself. And I went over there, met with the director of the meat plant, who was quite happy to see us because it was a critical time in their history. And we agreed to a collaboration agreement in the form of a joint venture where they would provide high quality beef sides and we would process them into products that were of high quality, packaged, labeled, and in a brand that we had registered at that time. All for the first time happening in Ukraine. So with the help of our staff that we hired and their enthusiasm, we were able to, in the next 2 years, reach every supermarket in Kiev, reach the hotels and restaurants over there, and even diversified or expanded our product line into poultry and vegetables. And in fact, at that time, the company had achieved something like 80% of the market share of high quality meat products. One fine day, there was a knock on the door. Several people with Kalashnikovs barged into our office. They threw me on the floor, terrorized our staff, pointed a gun at them, who disappeared out of fear. They had a truck parked below, and they picked up everything that we had in our office, our filing cabinets, even our desks, files, put it in their truck and drove off. We tried to recover our business, we tried. However, the powers that were behind this attack were a lot more powerful than we had ever thought. And at one point it became clear that this would be mission impossible. At that point, I decided to throw in the towel and go back home. I went back, and when I got home, I fell into a mental depression. My midlife crisis was precipitated earlier. I recovered, got out of the economic hole and the mental crisis that I had faced, and moved on with my life. Some years later, I was happening to read a newspaper, and it was talking about Ukraine and Ukraine's meat industry. And as I read the article, I realized that they were talking about the meat businesses that had been created over there, which were now employing thousands of people, generating jobs, adding to the economy. What were they doing? Exactly what we had started. Branded meat products being sold through supermarket chains and being sold to hotels and restaurants. Initially, my first reaction was sadness. Sadness because we had been denied the opportunity to remain over there, to participate in the country's success in this particular industry. That happened. But I also felt positive in some ways. Positive because the seeds that we had sown earlier on in developing the first private network distribution that included production and marketing of meat had blossomed into a major industry for the country. That idea, after reading the article, gave me the basis for this talk that we are having today at TED, which is that every individual has the possibility of transforming the world. Whether you succeed or whether you fail. I also felt, as a result of my own experiences and failures, that perhaps there would be a better way of doing this. If I were to advise you today with all of the hindsight of experience I have. And I have distilled this into a 3-step methodology, if I may say so, for anyone to go out and do this. So step number 1 is select the right country. And you can understand why, because based on my own personal experience, this is a critical step. So how do you select the right country? For me, the right country should have 2 characteristics. The first is, it should be safe for you and for your business. And the second, it should be low cost of living. Why do I emphasize low cost of living? Why? Because if you're starting a business on a bootstrap, you don't want high expensive living costs to eat away the money that you would be rather putting it into your business. And businesses always take longer than what we have planned in an ambiguous environment. So where do we get this information? Well, there are lists of countries out there by safety and security, and there are lists of countries out there by cost of living. And you have to merge these 2 lists and shortlist some countries that catches your interest. Step number 2, go there. In other words, go there and see if the ground reality is exactly what you have read and things are what you have been researching. Talk to people, visit supermarkets, and find out what exactly do they need. Services. Many times the developing world countries don't need the next big thing that we are all chasing after. They need basic stuff, and there is, believe it or not, a target market that can pay for it, that is growing as they grow. So once you have done that, come up with a business plan, 17-18 page document that tells you how you're going to get from point A to point B. Step 3, and this is the most important of them all, take the plunge. In other words, start the business. Don't hesitate. Don't overanalyze your data. Why? Because the country is shifting rapidly because of globalization. Things are happening too quick for you. Your data could be obsolete tomorrow. And overanalysis is an enemy of entrepreneurship. So don't procrastinate. You want to start and learn from your mistakes, and you will pivot your business based on the challenges you are likely to encounter. And what are you going to get back in return? Something extremely invaluable for you personally, which is instinct. Instinct of navigating in a world where nothing is clear. Now you may be wondering at this point, if I did all of this, what can happen? So let's look at the two scenarios as to what can happen. The first is a bad scenario, and the other one is a good scenario. So in the bad scenario, you don't make money, your business. It goes bankrupt, or it gets expropriated like mine did. What then? Well, you go back home. Your friends and family will still be there. They'll appreciate you for what you have done. And believe me, you will be at a lot higher learning curve by then, after this experience, than anyone else who just stayed back. What is the good side? The good side is you do well, you make money, you then scale up your business, you move to other cities, you may move to other countries, and at some point you may cash out and decide that you don't want to work for anyone else. In both cases, the country gets transformed, whether you lose or you win. So when you have so much of an upside potential to make a difference in the developing world, with so little of downside risk, what are you waiting for? Let's go and transform the world. Thank you.